At the 85th Academy Awards, which awarded the films of 2012, the supporting actor category featured 5 actors who had all won Oscars before, with no fresh faces to be found. The lineup included Alan Arkin for Argo, who had previously won for Little Miss Sunshine, Robert De Niro for Silver Linings Playbook, who previously won for The Godfather Part 2 and Raging Bull, Philip Seymour Hoffman for The Master, who previously won for Capote, Tommy Lee Jones for Lincoln, who had previously won for The Fugitive, and finally Christoph Waltz for Django Unchained, who won just 3 years earlier for Inglourious Basterds. No matter what happened, one of the 5 men was adding another Academy Award to their mantle on Oscar night. And going into the race, there was no clean sweeper, as Hoffman won at Critics' Choice, Jones won at SAG, and Waltz won the Golden Globe and BAFTA. Opinion was all over the place on who would take home the Oscar, but on Oscar night, Octavia Spencer announced the big winner.
Christoph Waltz, Django Unchained.
Christoph Waltz had won his second Oscar in 4 years and for another Quentin Tarantino movie. So how did Waltz win? We'll explore all this and more on today's episode of How Did They Win?
Django, have you always been alone? Django, have you never loved again? Love will live on, life must go on, for you cannot.
Hello and welcome back to How Did They Win? I always feel like I'm hosting a game show when I read that. A bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is, where we discuss any category excluding Best Picture that one of our patrons wants us to talk about from any Oscar year, and our patron Kevin Clowder wants us to talk about the supporting actor lineup of 2012, which is when Christoph Waltz won his second Oscar for Django Unchained against 4 other fellow actors who had won Oscars before. So we had Alan Arkin for Argo, Robert De Niro for Silver Linings Playbook, Philip Seymour Hoffman for The Master, and Tommy Lee Jones for Lincoln. And with me I have the dynamic duo once again. I've introduced them so many times by now that they barely need introducing, but it's Amy Thomasson and Tom O'Brien. Welcome back, guys.
Yay!
Yay!
Welcome back. So I realized that in these How Did They Wins, we've talked about a different above-the-line category for each one. So we did a Best Actress, we did a Best Actor, we did a Supporting Actress, we did Director, and now this is our first time doing a Supporting Actor lineup. So that's kind of fun. So before we jump in, I wanted to talk generally about this 2012 Best Supporting Actor lineup. I asked many of my Twitter followers to talk about how they felt about this lineup, and once again, there was a variety of responses to all the men who were nominated here. I'm just going to read a few now. So Sam Coffey just said, "I love this lineup." Glenda Miss Jackson, If You Nasty, said, "All iconic in their own ways." H3 said, "What a weird year." Joey Moser said, "I wish Philip Seymour Hoffman or Tommy Lee Jones won." Matthew St. Clair said, "It's pretty meh, plus 2/3 of the category is co-leads posing as supporting actors." Drew Chouanier said, "Doesn't really feel indicative of the breadth of good supporting roles that year at all." Akash Nicholas said, "Easily the least interesting supporting actor race in my lifetime." Chris Polly, per usual, Philip Seymour Hoffman is the only one here doing anything interesting. And Madding Mad World said, "Jones for the win, only interesting performance in this category." So yeah, again, much like most years, everyone has a different take on this field in general and who should have won, and I don't really know what either of you feel should have won, or if you feel like any of these nominees are crap, like some of these people feel. But let's talk about the lineup first of all in general. again, it's something rare to have a category full of previous winners. No big discoveries in the group. No one that's been nominated before, finally getting some recognition. Just a very sturdy lineup of actors that the Academy clearly loves. So, Tom, just going to you to general thoughts. How do you feel about the lineup as a whole?
It's tough, Kevin, because these five, since they've won before, none of them have an overdue story, which is what we're used to and what we're probably going to get in this upcoming Oscar. So it's like, I found the five to be, I'm kind of more in the meh category because of some of the category fraud. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman is definitely a co-lead. And De Niro, yes, is a supporting. Arkansas is supporting. They are supporting. Waltz that was a surprise to me. I didn't expect him to win again so soon. It's a good part, and he does it very, very well. And I think Tarantino wrote it to his strengths, and which he really manifested. But in the same film, you've got Leonardo DiCaprio doing really wonderful work, and we can get to the people who were nominated later. And Sam Jackson. There's a lot of really good performances this year that didn't make the final five. And this final five to me is sort of like taking names out of a hat.
Names out of an Oscar-winning hat, if you will. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, Amy, do you feel that this lineup is kind of meh?
I disagree. I agree with a lot of what Tom said. I feel like Tom and I, even when we're not totally eye to eye, I can completely understand where you're coming from, and I never feel like, what? No, excuse me, sir. I disagree. I agree that Waltz and Philip Seymour Hoffman were definitely co-leads of their films. Tommy Lee Jones, I have very mixed feelings on in general. He's good, but I think I'm still bitter that he won for The Fugitive over Ralph Fiennes for Schindler's List. Anytime, I always get into it with people when people mention like Michael Fassbender for 12 Years a Slave, and he was so great. And I'm always like, but it is possible to play a villain with layers and nuance. Yeah. And I feel like Ralph Fiennes in Schindler's List is my like go-to example of that. Yes, he's a villain, but he still has all these villainous layers. He's not just like, I'm a villain. So Tommy Lee Jones, I always feel like he shows up and he does a good job. Robert De Niro, I always love. I love him in this part. And Alan Arkin, he's another one. Like, I just love him. I do. I agree, though, that after watching that film, Arkin was not the one that I was like, Arkin clearly is going to get an Oscar. I feel like he and Goodman were like a little duo in that, and almost like they should have both gotten it. But yes, in a lot of these movies, like Argo, like Django especially, almost the entire cast could have gotten supporting nominations because they were all so good. So I like these films. I thought some of these were career bests, but that's just me.
Interesting. Okay. Well, excited to get into all that. I will say for myself, I like this lineup of actors in general. I think in terms of quality, it's definitely a very clear hierarchy that I will get to later on in my ranking. But in general, I tend to like the Oscars when they are rewarding newer talent and discoveries, or like I said, people who have never been nominated but could finally get that recognition. And I didn't feel like any of that is present here so much as just like, these are five actors that are always dependable in movies that we just enjoy their presence. And I don't know if this is a particularly strong crop in general for me, there's actually only one of these nominees that I would say is truly Oscar worthy. Absolutely give him the win. The other four I like in parts, but just doesn't feel like enough for me. So yeah, I'm excited to jump into our perhaps different opinions on some of these. And the order we're going to go in here is very unscientific, but you know, I think this was a race that was kind of all over the place based on precursors and nominations that people got or didn't get. But I'm just going to go sort of based on what I was getting a sense of in the race of like, these are the people who were lucky to be there. These are the people who are more likely in the hunt for the win. So let's start things off with the person who has the least screen time in his film, which is Alan Arkin in Argo.
A couple of weeks ago, I was sitting at Trader Vic's. I was enjoying a Mai Tai when my pal Warren Beatty comes in. He wishes me well. We had a little chat. Seems he was attached to star in Zulu Empire, which was going to anchor that MGM slate. But Warren confided in me that the picture's gone over budget because the Zulu extras want to unionize. They may be cannibals, but they want health and dental so the movie's kaput. Which means that the MGM deal ain't gonna happen and your script ain't worth the buffalo shit on a nickel. So, the way it looks to me, through the cataracts I grant you, is that you can either sign here and take $10,000 for your toilet paper script, or you can go fuck yourself. With all due respect.
So, by far the lowest amount of screen time of these 5 nominees. According to this wonderful website resource I use, Screen Time Central, he is in this for 8 minutes, which is about 7% of the film. Later on, we'll talk about some nominees who are very much on the border of lead and supporting, but here we have a true blue supporting performance, and in Argo, he plays Lester Siegel, who is a veteran producer of film who greenlights a fake movie called Argo, which is to be used as a cover to help get hostages out of Iran. So I'll turn to Amy first. What are your feelings on Alan Arkin in Argo?
If I had to pick, there's really 2 people that I feel like could easily be dropped from this list, and Arkin would be on there. That is not to say that Alan Arkin is not his usual charming self, but I don't think he needed the nomination. I think Goodman was just as good as he was. If you're gonna I feel like with him, it was like they picked out of a hat. And probably it was a coattails thing that Argo was also nominated for Best Picture. Yet I feel like that year there wasn't really a forerunner for Best Picture. I don't know what your opinions are. I haven't listened to your episode on that yet, but I don't have a whole lot to say. He was good. Do I think he should have been nominated? No, I do not.
Okay. And Tom?
I think he got nominated because he had, I think, the best single line of dialogue of 2012. If I'm doing a fake movie, it's going to be a fake hit. I can see Academy voters saying, "Oh, that's great." So I can see why he got the nod. I would actually, I think he and John Goodman are in another film entirely, and I would love to see that film.
Yes, I agree. I 100% agree. They are. They're like a little duo.
They're wonderful.
And their chemistry.
They're a comedy team, and both of them being great actors.
When is John Goodman going to get an Academy Award, people? Look at his body of work. I mean, seriously, the man is amazing. He should have an EGOT.
Yeah, I mean, you know, from Lebowski,
he's got the stage career, he's got the TV career,
and you know, like from Lebowski to 10 Cloverfield Lane. I mean, these are all worthy performances. Nothing.
His work on Roseanne back in the 90s, he was phenomenal. My parents saw him in Waiting for Godot.
Oh yeah.
Before he lost all that weight, and they were like, I don't know how this man was rolling on the stage. Like, John Goodman deserves so much more recognition than I think he gets.
But I don't begrudge Arkin. Yeah, it's a small part, and it's really supporting, which I kind of like, given the fact we have a few co-leads in this category. But it's. I think it was that fake movie line that really hit home for him. I like him. I really do. One of our great actors. It's not the greatest performance he's ever given, but I must say that if I see Argo again, he's the one I'm looking forward to seeing again most.
Yeah, well, speaking to the John Goodman thing, that's exactly a clear example of someone who, if they got their recognition for Argo, I would be like, that's fantastic. He's never been nominated before. He's finally in a movie that the Academy clearly loved enough to give Best Picture. So in the right movie, felt like a good time to get him one, and it just didn't happen. He was in The Artist the year before, so he was having like kind of a resurgence in film in that way. I don't know. I hope his time is coming. But for Arkin, this is very far from Oscar-worthy work for me. I think he's good in the role, and he inhabits the character well enough, but I don't see anything outstanding about this. He does know how to give a good, punchy kind of one-liner, which that's most of what his performance is. The whole fake hit line is great. I wrote down a few others. He says, "You're worried about the Ayatollah? Try the WGA." And
I tell you, that's true. Good.
Tom, did that ring true for you, Tom?
Oh man.
Yeah.
I saw it at the WGA screening room, and that brought down the house.
Yeah, and then obviously Argo, fuck yourself, famous catchphrase, which is probably probably clinched the nomination ultimately. But I think this is a very clear case of, the right movie, being in the right movie and being the comic relief, which is fine, but it's such a shallow character compared to what everyone else is giving in this lineup.
Mm-hmm. And people we will talk about later who didn't get into the lineup.
Yeah, exactly. We get a tiny bit, I think, in one scene where he talks about having a kind of a rough relationship with his kid, and that gives us like a tiny little glimpse of who this guy is, but ultimately he's just someone who you rely on for a few catchphrases and funny little quips more than like a fully fleshed out character. So he just doesn't get much to do in the end, and that's why I put him at the bottom here, is that even though he actually gets every single precursor nomination, he gets Golden Globe, SAG, BAFTA, Critics' Choice, he gets in everywhere. He doesn't win anything. He doesn't win anything all season, including critics, unlike the other four people here. So I think this is just a coattail situation based off the love of the film.
Mm-hmm. That being said, I love you, Alan Arkin. You're so good.
Sure.
He's such a likable guy. You can't just not like him.
Yeah. I think in terms of the narrative, he's someone who's a recent Oscar winner. At this point, he won for Little Miss Sunshine in 2006, so that was 6 years prior to this. And so he's in the club, and I think I would have ranked him perhaps higher or given him a better chance if perhaps Ben Affleck was nominated for director for Argo, which he was not. But I feel like it's hard to explain considering Argo did so well with all the precursors, winning every single thing, winning Best Picture. But it sort of feels like, even though it does sweep, there were still people who were like, I don't know. The whole Ben Affleck factor of it all. Yeah. I don't know how certain directors felt about a classic case of an actor doing directing now. So I think this is just a filler nomination at the end of the day. Congrats to him. Maybe we'll see him again in this decade. Any other thoughts on Alan Arkin?
I hope so too.
Yeah. Nope. I think we admire, but it's probably fifth.
I'm glad he won for Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah. Even though Eddie Murphy is great in Dreamgirls, so.
That scene with his granddaughter when he's like, "We'll tell them all to go to hell." Oh.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to, again, this is a very loose order, so people can quibble with it all they want. I don't care. Robert De Niro in Silver Linings Playbook.
Maybe I didn't spend enough time with you growing up. I spent too much time with your brother. It might have made you feel worse about your behavior, but I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to handle it. I mean, that's what all this Eagles stuff is about. It's about us spending time now. I want to do everything I can to help you get back on your feet. That's the whole point. Yeah. I wish you'd watch these games with me. So we could talk and we could get into things.
So this was his first nomination since Cape Fear in 1991, which is quite a while for an actor who had gotten 2 Oscars and still had done pretty solid work, including things like Heat and, Casino, but also lots of kind of dumb comedies, lots of sort of junky gangster movies that weren't really up to par with what he had done previously. But anyway, I think this was a bit of a comeback for him in terms of the awards conversation. So in Silver Linings Playbook, he plays Pat Solitano Sr., who's the father of Bradley Cooper's character. Very much into the Philadelphia Eagles and has a lot of superstitions and just trying to make them win. And it's sort of suggested that he may have some undiagnosed OCD. So let's go to Tom. What are your thoughts on old Bobby De Niro's return to the Oscars?
Well, I was very happy to see it because I think of all of his stupid comedies, this is the best. I don't know why he does all this crap like the war with Grandpa and stuff like that. Maybe he has an ex-wife to pay off. I don't know. But
wasn't he in Rocky and Bullwinkle too?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, he's really the male Meryl Streep of our generation, I think. And she doesn't do this crap. Why does he do it? I'm just, nonetheless, Silver Linings was not crap, and he was terrific in it, I thought. I think his interactions with Jackie Weaver were really good. You really felt like they were married. And with Bradley Cooper, I mean, there's that whole, father-son, slightly disappointed in my son kind of thing. He is so good in this. And it really puts, it really kind of highlights how the other comedies he's doing this puts it to shame because it's so good. And if I was an Academy voter, I'd be torn between Tommy Lee Jones and De Niro to vote for because they're both so good. And this is really one of his best performances in a long time. Decades, and I think it's way better than Cape Fear.
Okay.
Interesting.
Amy?
Okay. I loved him in Cape Fear. I thought he was great. And I agree. I mean, when I talk about garbage, it's like Rocky and Bullwinkle. And you want to be like, Robert De Niro, you're Robert De Niro. You don't have to do this. But the one thing I like about David O. Russell films, and I'm one of the few that, likes most of his movies, despite the fact that it is sort of a comedy, these people. You know people who are like this. And if you've ever met anybody who likes this, I like that it didn't glamorize mental illness. It shows its ugliness. Side note, I think Cooper was robbed of a win, but that's just me. But De Niro is so real, and it's such a heartfelt performance. As much as he's like, oh, the kooky dad, or with his things, that's what made him real. And the scenes where where he and Jackie Weaver, also she's amazing. Side note, she was also amazing in this film, and also earned her nomination. When what's his name? When Cooper's having the meltdown after reading the Ernest Hemingway book, Farewell to Arms, and he's flipping out, which I may or may not have done over a Ernest Hemingway book myself. And De Niro's just trying to hold him together to protect his wife, calm his son down. It's amazing. He's doing all these different things. You feel that I love my son. I'm kind of ashamed. I'm kind of confused by my son. He's still being a dad to his son, trying to make him responsible. And you have to go fix the window. And now you have to do this. And this is your responsibility. And so it is a wonderful performance in a film filled with wonderful performances.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I really liked them. But it was hard to rank this category because there were leads in the thing. So it's hard to be like, who would I vote for? Because some of the other ones were also phenomenal performances, but you're like, would I not vote for it because it's category fraud? Or should I not vote for it anyway because it is actually amazing?
Yeah.
The stress I was under coming up with my rankings for this. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, everyone I think has a different criteria of what they allow and don't allow when it comes to category fraud. We'll talk about that when we get to rankings. I really like De Niro here. Yeah, he does a lot of the classic kind of mannerisms that we know and love from De Niro sometimes, which is why I don't think this is a huge stretch, but it also gives him some solid dramatic material here that we don't always see. Obviously, I think his big Oscar scene is when he's talking to his son on the bed and trying to calm him down, and he's sort of tearing up and saying, you know, maybe I didn't spend enough time with you growing up. And then there's that subtext of him maybe having those signs of OCD, but not really acknowledging them. He has this very certain order of things that things need to be in. You know, his remote and his special chair and all these little things. And I don't know if anyone's really questioned him at that point on all these very specific routines. So he's just fully convinced of that, you know, this needs to be exactly right in order to set up this Eagles win. But then it's in those moments of him like having to admit that maybe all of these superstitions aren't really contributing to these wins, like when Jennifer Lawrence as Tiffany comes in and gives him all the stats about like how she's not really the bad luck charm that he thinks she is, and he's like, oh well, you know, I'll have to think about that a little bit, you know. Yeah. And you know, later on in the dance competition when he's telling his son that he should go after Tiffany, there's just so much conviction in him, and he's just very consistent, I think. I feel like I know a lot of people like Pat Sr. You know, I have an uncle who's very into football who behaves in such a similar way to him, you know, not on the level of like all the little superstitions, but just in the sense of like, this is what needs to happen for things to go our way.
But also that generation of we handle our problems by ourselves,
right,
and we don't
exactly.
go to psychiatric hospital because I'm a real man. And sure, I drink and gamble and do all these other things, but the character really hits home. I'll just leave it at that. But it's very, very real, and I think that's what I liked about the performance so much.
And I come from an Irish Catholic family, which is granted.
No more, just kidding.
Yeah, oh, I know. But, you know, I relate to so much of that, you know, because it's that. Oh, I would say probably obsession at times with masculinity. Mm-hmm. It's really tough, especially when you're growing up gay in a Irish Catholic household. And luckily, I have another brother who is also gay, so that really has helped to ease it a little bit. But nonetheless, it's the character that De Niro has is someone I really relate to because I've met people like that.
Yeah, there's something very recognizable in his performance and Jackie Weaver's performance.
Aww.
I feel like she's one who gets a lot of crap for her nomination, which I get it just in the sense of she doesn't have a lot to do, but she's such a scene stealer for me.
And she's someone who Robert De Niro's character would absolutely be married to.
Yeah.
So with the, and she kind of enables him to be how he is. Oh, she makes sure he has his envelopes and he has all of his things that he needs. And she's not going to be like, dude, this is a little crazy. She's going to make sure she makes those crabby snacks.
And homemades. Yes.
Yes. And homemades. And the fact that she called them homemades.
Right.
If anyone was a supporting actress in that, I'd say it's Jennifer Lawrence, but that's just me.
Well,
that's a whole other
That's a whole
episode.
other discussion. Yes.
But this cast was just so, especially that she called them homemades. That's what my Italian grandmother called them when she made them.
And we have to recognize the fact that all 4 actors were nominated.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and that hasn't happened since 1981 with Reds. So, I mean, I think all of those actors are doing great work. I think it's kind of wild to me that this was the movie that did it, because it's just like, a solid like romantic comedy drama, but not the type of thing that you would expect Oscars to really fall head over heels for,
Yet I was not a Cooper fan, but I had no desire to see this movie. I was not a Bradley Cooper fan. I thought he was just a little pretty boy from Hollywood. Then I saw this movie. I was like, what is wrong? Like, how did I miss this? And then I found out he got like an MFA. Like, he is a trained actor.
Yeah, he knows
And
his
this
stuff.
this is my kind of film. The script, there's interesting characters. I love the whole trope of these people are down on their luck. They're losers, and yet they find each other. I love that whole we're outsiders, we're these fringe people, and yet somehow the other movie, As Good as It Gets, I feel like the same thing. These people who are just these outsiders, they're lonely, and somehow they crazily end up together. And they're always really well-acted movies when you get the right people.
And I don't know whether you remember this, but at the time, Russell and Bradley went around to the news shows to talk about it in terms of mental health. So it gave it potentially to voters a heft that it's simply a romantic comedy wouldn't have had.
Yes. I didn't see it as just a romantic comedy, but maybe that's just me.
It's a dramedy, I would say.
Yeah. I think romantic comedy, I think of like 27 Dresses or whatever, Bridesmaids Dresses or Schlock.
Well, Robert De Niro, he only gets SAG nominated and Critics' Choice nominated. He does not get in at the Golden Globes or BAFTA, so he has a few misses here and there. So I don't know if his nomination was that certain going into the Oscar nomination morning. But as we saw, like we just said, the Academy was head over heels for Silver Linings Playbook. It gave it 8 nominations, which, again, for like a contemporary romantic comedy drama type of film like this, I would say is pretty rare. You expect that more for period pieces and big swooping dramas. But, I know there were some people that were actually predicting him to win at the Oscars, which is probably based on goodwill for him coming back like this and the movie doing so well overall and just the race being so up in the air that I suppose anything was possible. To me, it felt like this was just a great welcome back nomination more than so much like a wow, what an astonishing performance. We need to give you a 3rd Oscar type of situation.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this preview of How Did They Win, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup.is and become a patron. Only $3 a month will get you access to bonus episodes, a Slack channel, and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.